You ever have that feeling that your money just doesn't go as far as it used to? I mean, groceries, gas, rent. It feels like everything costs more. So what's going on? Why does the cash in your wallet seem to be losing its power right before your eyes?
Well, there's a simple, one-word answer to this whole mystery, and that word is inflation. Okay, so what is inflation, really? Let's break it down. In the simplest terms, it's when the price of, well, just about everything goes up. And when that happens, the purchasing power of your money goes down. Every single dollar you have buys a little bit less than it did yesterday.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 3 acts. So first up, let's dive into Act 1, the price of everything. This is all about that feeling you get at the checkout counter, or when you're staring at the gas pump. You know, the real tangible hit of rising costs.
Now, I know it can seem super complex, but at its core, inflation is really driven by just 3 main forces. You can think of them as the main suspects in our little economic mystery. So, let's go investigate.
All right, suspect number 1 is something called demand pull inflation. So, what happens when basically everyone wants to buy more stuff than there is to go around? It's a classic case of supply and demand, right?
Economists have this perfect little phrase for it. Too much money chasing too few goods. You know, when a ton of people have cash burning a hole in their pockets and they all want the same limited stuff, well, prices are naturally going to get pulled upwards. Think about a hot real estate market, for example. Let's say everyone suddenly rushes out to buy an apartment, but the number of apartments for sale hasn't changed. What do you think happens? Exactly. The sellers realize they can charge more, and boom, prices shoot up. That right there is demand pull inflation in action.
Okay, on to our second driver. This one is called cost push inflation. And in this case, prices don't rise because everyone's buying. No, they rise because it just gets more expensive to make the stuff in the first place. Just think about the price of oil. I mean, oil is in almost everything: transportation, manufacturing, even plastics. So if the global price of oil suddenly spikes, well, it gets more expensive to ship goods, it gets more expensive to run factories, and it gets more expensive to make all kinds of products. Now, companies aren't just going to eat that cost, are they? No way. They pass it right on to you, the consumer. And that's when you see those higher prices in the store.
And hey, it's not just about raw materials like oil. The exact same thing happens with labor costs. So, for instance, if workers in a huge manufacturing country successfully push for higher wages, what happens? The cost of making all those goods goes up. And that extra cost, it gets baked right into the final price of all the stuff we buy. Okay, that brings us to our third driver. And honestly, this one might be the most fascinating of all. Because this one, it's not really about goods or money. It's about what's going on inside our own heads. It's the psychology of inflation.
Get this. It turns out that what we all believe will happen with prices tomorrow can actually change what happens today. It's a real thing. It's called inflationary expectations. And trust me, it is an incredibly powerful force.
Let's just walk through an example so you can see how this works. Imagine the news is buzzing with rumors about sanctions on a big oil-producing country. You and everybody else start thinking, oh man, gas prices are about to skyrocket. So what do? You dash to the gas station to fill up your tank right now while it's still kind of cheap. But here's the kicker. When millions of people do the exact same thing at the exact same time, that huge sudden spike in demand, well, it causes the very price jump everyone was scared of. The prophecy literally fulfills itself.
All right, so there you have it. Our 3 main drivers: demand pull, cost push, and our own expectations. But so what? How does all this theory actually affect your wallet? Let's get really practical here. Okay, let's apply this to a massive financial decision, taking out a 20-year mortgage. Imagine you've got 2 choices. Option 1, a fixed, nominal interest rate. Option 2, an index-linked rate that actually changes with inflation. Now, if you think high inflation is coming, which one of those loans is the safer bet? What would you choose?
Well, the difference is absolutely massive. If you take that fixed nominal rate loan, your monthly payment is locked in. That's it. So as inflation goes up, and maybe your salary does too, that mortgage payment just stays the same. It's like your debt is actually shrinking in real terms over time. But that index-linked loan? Whoa! Your payments and even the total amount you owe will actually increase with inflation. In a world of high inflation, that thing can become a serious financial trap.
And listen, this is not just some textbook theory. This really happened. Just look at Israel back in the 1980s. They went through a period of hyperinflation that peaked at an insane 400% a year.
The people who had those fixed-rate loans, they were the winners. Their debt practically vanished. But for the folks with index-linked loans, it was a complete nightmare. Their debt exploded, and tragically, a lot of people lost their homes. It's a powerful lesson.
So the key takeaway here is pretty simple, but it's crucial. You have to kind of flip your thinking depending on whether you're borrowing or saving. When it comes to long-term debt, like a mortgage, a fixed rate is your best friend during high inflation. But for your savings, you want the exact opposite. You want to protect your money's value, so an index-linked account that actually grows with inflation is absolutely the smarter move.
Okay, for our final act, let's zoom all the way out. How does everything we've talked about apply to the pretty strange and puzzling economic world we're all living in right now? And this is where we get to a real modern mystery. For years now, economists have been scratching their heads. We've had all the classic ingredients for major inflation, right? Massive government spending, super low unemployment, central banks printing literally trillions of dollars, and yet inflation has been weirdly, historically low. It's been defying all the old rules. Some people have described this strange period of low inflation and super low interest rates as a narrow window of opportunity. It's this really unusual time that's allowed governments, companies, and people like you and me to borrow money incredibly cheaply. But here's the warning that comes with it. That window, it is not going to be open forever.
And that leaves us with a really critical question, doesn't it? When this window finally does close, and inflation comes back, and it probably will, are we going to be prepared? Are our governments ready? Are our financial systems ready? And most importantly, are you ready? Understanding the forces we've talked about today, well, that's the absolute first step to being prepared for whatever comes next.
Let's talk about a single number that quietly decides how much you pay for, well, everything. From your morning coffee to your rent. It's a word you hear all the time on the news, but what does it actually mean? Well, today, we're breaking down inflation. You know that feeling, right? You go to the grocery store with the same amount of money as last year, but you walk out with way less stuff. It's a feeling we all get, and I promise you it is not just in your head. Well, that feeling, it has a name. Inflation. It's that slow creeping process where your money's power to buy things goes down over time. But to really get a handle on it, we first have to figure out how it's even measured. So how do economists put a number on that feeling? Okay, so the main tool for this job is something called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. Just think of it as the official scorekeeper for inflation. It takes all the thousands of different price changes happening out there and boils them down into one single powerful number that tells us how much more expensive life is getting. So whenever you hear on the news that inflation is up by, let's say, 3%, that number is coming directly from the CPI. But how in the world is it calculated? Where does this number that shapes our entire economy actually come from? Come on, let's pull back the curtain. The whole idea behind the CPI comes down to something surprisingly simple, a pretend shopping basket. The goal is to fill this basket with everything an average family buys in a given month, and then see what the total price tag is. So, who decides what goes into this basket? Well, it's not a guess. Government agencies like the Central Bureau of Statistics actually survey thousands of real families. They dig into their spending habits to build an accurate picture of what a typical household is really buying. It's all based on data. And this is what that basket looks like broken down. It's a pretty fascinating look at what we spend our money on, right? Food, no surprise, is the biggest chunk at 29%. I mean, we all gotta eat. Next up is housing at 18%. Then you've got other big ones like clothing and communication. And then everything else, health, entertainment, you name it, gets grouped into that big other slice. And if you zoom in on those categories, you see the real everyday stuff we all buy. Food isn't just a concept. It's the actual price of fruits, veggies, and frozen pizza. Housing means rent or a mortgage payment. Communication is literally your internet and phone bill. This basket is designed to be a mirror of our actual monthly expenses. All right, so we've got our basket. We know what's in it. Now for the really important part. How do we get from this giant shopping list to that single little inflation percentage? Well, it turns out the math is actually pretty simple. It's really just a three-step process. First, they calculate the total cost of everything in that basket in 1 month. We'll call it month 1. Then the next month, they price out the exact same stuff again. And finally, they just figure out the percentage change between those two totals. That's pretty much it. Let's use an easy example to make this crystal clear. Let's say in month 1, the total cost for our entire basket comes out to exactly $8,000. Then the surveyors go out in month 2 and find that buying all that identical stuff now costs $8,800. Okay, so the price of the basket went up by $800. A little bit of quick math shows us that 800 is exactly 10% of the original $8,000 cost. And boom, there it is. The government would announce that inflation for the month was 10%. That is the number you hear on the news. So we've gone from a big shopping list all the way down to a single percentage. But why should you care? Why does this one number matter so much to your actual real life? Here's the thing you've got to understand. The CPI creates massive ripple effects. Because it's the main way we measure inflation, central banks use it to make huge decisions. If the CPI is high, they'll probably raise interest rates. And for you, that means your mortgage, your car loans, your credit card debt, it all could get more expensive. It directly impacts your wallet, all while telling you that your day-to-day costs are already going up. So maybe the best way to think about it is this. The CPI isn't just some dry statistic in a report. It's a story told through numbers about what it costs all of us to live our lives, and how that story is changing every single month. It's a snapshot of our shared economic reality. And all of this leads us to the next giant question, doesn't it? We've just figured out how inflation is measured, but we haven't touched on the why. What are the huge forces in the economy that make prices of everything from milk to mortgages go up in the first place? Well, that's the next piece of this whole puzzle.